It's that time. Your fix is here. College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
It is the final installment of January, JC and Morgan. Welcome, everybody. Welcome all. Hopefully you're warmer than you were a couple of weeks ago when it was downright freezing in the Southeast and beyond. He is JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports. I am Mike Morgan of ESPN on the SEC Network. And once again, we bring you wall-to-wall college football coverage and then some on this very podcast, number 228 if you're scoring at home. And if so, we appreciate those that have been here all along, going back to the 2 paper cups and a string days on Skype to the technologically sound version that we are today. We now have a producer in Phil Molinax, the Mad Dog, keeping us technically sound. We are now available on every single platform, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some others, but we're out there. We do record this live, usually every Monday morning, and that will be the case again today. But as always, if you miss us, you can catch us at any time. That's the beauty of modern technology. You listen to the shows you love on your time, not on ours. You can also check out the website, jcandmorgan.com, where every installment of this fine podcast is documented and ready to listen if you desire to do so. And a lot of people go back and listen to great guests that we've had in the past because most of those are pretty timeless, to be honest with you. And that'll be the case again today with Josh Pate, who will join us at 10 o'clock. You know, Josh does a great job. He's kind of I guess, JC, he's affiliated with 24/7 and CBS, but I almost look at him as like an independent savant, right? Like he's kind of made it his own brand, and I know you were a guy that alerted me of Josh's talents years ago, and talking about getting him on before he kind of blew up on the scene, and I know you were instrumental, you being the kingmaker that you are at Shurb Nation. But we had him on a while back, and he's always interesting to talk to. He covers, like us, he loves college football year-round, and he'll be part of the prestigious multi-performance guests on this very show. So we look forward to having him on at 10 o'clock. And in the meantime, we'll get to the JC5 and other stuff. And JC, I hope you're doing well. I see you're dressed accordingly to Chicago winter with a full cap, heavy sweatshirt. And you're bearded. You probably got a hot mug of something in front of you and a St. Bernard ready to save you if you start suffering from hypothermia.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a great reference there on the St. Bernard, by the way. It's like Saturday morning cartoons.
Yes, yes.
But no, yeah, Josh is great. He, you look around the country and you kind of see people that have become new voices in college football, and Josh has to be up there. And you're right. He is affiliated with us at 24/7 CBS and just re-signed a contract and great, because I'd be sad if he went anywhere else, you know?
Yeah.
And he does a great job. But a lot of it is on him. You know, the CBS 24/7, they've given him the tools, but he's built the house, and it's a Josh Pate house, you know,
yeah.
So to speak. And he's always been that way. Very creative guy. He and I are kind of like you and I in the sense that we'll come up with terms. Like there could be a dictionary the three of us write about college football. Like you have
right, the college football glossary.
I came up with caged animal syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, what did he come up with the other day? Alabama fans were trust fund fans.
Right.
Because they never, the younger ones have never experienced it. Mike Schuler or anything like that. All they know is national championships.
Right.
Trust fund fans. I like that. So it'll be great to catch up with him as always, and I'm sure it'll be entertaining, energetic. We won't even have to do much. So I'm looking forward to it.
Normally we shoot an email and kind of go over the format of what we're going to discuss. Honestly, sometimes with a good guest, I don't want any specific idea in mind. I just want it to take us wherever it takes us, and that's kind of the way it'll be with Josh. again at 10 o'clock. Did you catch the championship games yesterday? Championship Sunday, one of the best weekends on the calendar.
I did. Man, the NFL playoffs just have not disappointed maybe the last 4 years since the Chiefs have been good. Very few blowouts. I think the pandemic Super Bowl was what a blowout, but very few blowouts. A lot of really good games. And that was the case this year. You know, I thought the Chiefs' defense was the difference against Baltimore. And then I thought, you know, the 49ers just were kind of a team of destiny. And heartbreaks for Dan Campbell for the Lions. I know he's going to take some crap because he went for it instead of kicking the field goal. Sometimes maybe hindsight is crystal clear, but in the arena, in the heat of the moment, coaches have to do the best they can. But really, I mean, you just kind of look at it. You're up 24-7 and collapse and loss, and that's it. You know, so that's you know, I feel really bad for those fans just because they've been through. I mean, in the NFL, it doesn't really matter who you pull for, Mike. Chances are you're going to cycle up at some point. Now, the Jets and the Browns and the Lions before this year, we're kind of waiting on those guys to do so. But, I mean, how many years were the Bills terrible? So they drafted Josh Allen. And there you go. They're contending. The Chiefs were not very good for a long, long time. You know, teams cycle up, teams cycle down. That's the way the league is designed. But when you have a have-not like that gets their opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, you know, and a lot of times the quote-unquote have-nots do it. I mean, you know, Carolina Panthers are the worst team in the league right now, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls through the years. Actually 2 in an NFC Championship game. The Jaguars went to the playoff. I mean, you know, there's examples. But when a team like that, with that kind of fan base, gets that close, and then boom, no soup for you. It's gut wrenching to me. Just maybe I'm too empathetic, but I just I hate it for those guys.
Well, and like I have friends that are from Michigan, and a couple of them are still giddy over the Michigan Wolverines national championship. So they got that. This was almost like too good to be true. A Wolverines natty, and you're going to give the Lions a Super Bowl appearance. You're gonna put them into Bobby Lane territory. The last time they actually played for a championship of any kind, we didn't even have the Super Bowl back then. It was almost too good to be true, and the meltdown. You know, look, you can go over a number of different things of what turned that game, but it was very entertaining. The other one I thought was massive as well, and much as I thought, the same carnival barkers that are gleeful whenever Josh Allen doesn't win a game despite not making any mistakes and throwing a 65-yard dart on the money against howling winds and a receiver drops it. Those are the same people making excuses for Lamar Jackson. Look, Lamar Jackson's a phenomenal talent, but you can't just turn the other cheek on his playoff performances. They're not good, and it was pretty obvious. Like I heard somebody saying, I just wonder sometimes if people are watching the same game that I am. I heard somebody say this morning on a national show, well, clearly they should have ran Lamar more. Bro, they're blitzing every play, and they have a spy on Lamar. What the Chiefs are saying is we don't fear Lamar Jackson throwing the ball downfield at all. So, yeah, he's going to get a couple of elite runs because he's one of the best running quarterbacks we've ever seen. He's an alien. But we don't fear him throwing the ball deep. And time again, he's missing on throws. And Tony Romo is very gingerly, politely saying, well, that throws off the mark, and that throws off the mark, and this one needs a little more touch, and that one needs to be here. But that is, until that gets rectified, Baltimore is not going to the next level. And they had a loaded defense and a really good offense. Like they were number one in everything because they've drafted really well. Their front office has been outstanding, whether it's Ozzie Newsome or anybody else. I mean, they don't miss much in Baltimore. But I had them once this year. I had the Ravens-Browns game back when Deshaun Watson was healthy. Same thing. Baltimore led for 3 quarters. Lamar threw a pick 6 and another bad pick in the fourth quarter, and they lost the game. So, I mean, I just when I watch that, I'm like, man, oh, man, if they can just get that – because everything else Baltimore has. Like, Baltimore could be the way we talk about Kansas City. The difference is Lamar Jackson ain't Pat Mahomes. Not even close. Pat Mahomes is just different. I was thinking about this. So I have called in college, when they were in college, a Purdy game, a Lamar game, and a Mahomes game. And with the exception of Lamar, who was like ridiculously good, Heisman Trophy good in college, I never saw Brock Purdy coming, and I didn't see Pat Mahomes coming. I'd love to tell you that I was smart enough when and he was great in the game I called, but Texas Tech was always great. Texas Tech, anytime I called a Texas Tech game, it didn't matter who the quarterback was in that system, they lit it up. So I saw Pat Mahomes, and yeah, he made some special throws. I was like, yeah, he'll be all right. Maybe he'll be a, I don't know, 4th-round pick and make a roster. But I never saw that coming.
I didn't either.
I mean, who did, right? I mean, he did slip to 10. And, of course, to be able to work with Andy Reid, and for a while the Cheetah, and then Kelsey is just, I don't know how he does it, but he always gets open, and then he's just a problem. Like, he is Gronk 2.0. He really, a healthy Gronk, an agile Gronk. Maybe he turns out to be better than Gronk. I don't know, but I mean, I just don't know how do you stop them. And Andy Reid's play calling is just, he's always ahead of the game. He's always got wrinkles. Like, you think you're going to stop them vertically. He does all these little crossers and misdirection. He's a nightmare to try to scheme. Just an absolute nightmare. And Mahomes never panics. It's the little things that Pat Mahomes does that's brilliant. Backing up, buying time, not taking sacks, not committing grounding penalties, just throwing it just far enough in the area of a receiver to just, okay, no problem, we'll reset 2nd and 10, but no loss on the play. Now they're a machine. That's going to be an interesting Super Bowl to watch. But I was thinking about this too, JC. Goff, Purdy, Lamar, and Mahomes. You know how I watch games in the NFL because I love both, and I get a chance to broadcast both. And I can't help. My brain always goes. It resets back to where did he play in college? What did he do in college? So here's your Fab Four quarterbacks. Goff went to Cal. Purdy went to Iowa State, Lamar went to Louisville, and Mahomes went to Texas Tech. So it's Big 12, ACC, Big 12, and soon to be ACC, formerly the Pac when it comes to Goff, who's the one quarterback I've never seen in person of the 4. So it just goes to show you sometimes you don't have to go. In a day and age where you were talking about the difference between the NFL and college, and you're absolutely right. The NFL is built for change. College is built for the rich get richer, and the middle class remains the middle class and can never get out of it. That's, with few exceptions, that's the way college football has been built for as long as we've been following the sport. The NFL is the opposite, and the NFL draft is such an equalizer because you can pluck a 7th rounder in Purdy. You can watch Mahomes get passed on by 9 teams and go to Texas Tech and become one of the best of all time. Yeah, so I just find that interesting. ACC, Big 12, ACC, Big 12. Those were the quarterbacks you were watching on Championship Sunday.
Yeah, it was weird. Quick note on Goff, because I know we got to get to JC5. In recruiting, he was an unknown kid out of Northern California, and I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's Tom Davis. I'm not sure. Scout for the Ravens that knew my buddy Tim, who is one of the better talent guys that I've ever worked with. And I got a call from Tim one day, and he's like, "This dude's good." And I said, "All right." We looked at him, and we put him in. I think we put him in our top 247. I think we had a string there where we were the only ones that ranked Mariota, Johnny Manziel, Jared Goff, had them higher than the industry average. Of course, we screwed up and didn't make Jameis Winston a 5-star that year. But, hey, you win some, you lose some, right? But Trubisky was in our top 247. We had a run there, and Goff was part of that. And he had, I think, one offer from Cal, which, by the way, Aaron Rodgers also went to Cal. One offer from Cal.
Yeah, at a Chico Junior College.
Yeah, man. So, anyway, always been a fan of Jared Goff. Glad to see. And how about that trade? I mean, it worked out great for the Rams and the Lions.
Yeah.
How many times do we ever see that, where
Rarely.
It's worked out fine for both. So, hate that they lost, but they had a hell of a season, and just hate it for that organization. But we'll see what happens moving forward.
All right. So you want to try and squeeze in the 5 now, or you want to wait till it post Pate? All right. We'll squeeze it in fast. because I got a number of things I want to get to later as well, including with Josh on replacing a coaching legend like Michigan's got to do. All right, time for the JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
Mike, in the how does it happen category, how in the world does Arizona, they fired their AD the other day, they're $240 million in the hole. I understand COVID happened. I don't really see this happening across the country, though. How does this take place in modern college athletics? How did they get to this point?
Well, you hit on the biggest obstacle, which was COVID. And remember, the Pac decided to play an abbreviated season. How many games did they play? 6? It's like a half a year.
Yeah, they were less than the Big Ten. They were 3, 4, 5.
4 or 5. Okay, so that's not even half the TV money, and the TV money, as we know, was dwarfed in comparison to leagues like the SEC and the Big Ten. So that's number one. Arizona's just been a problem for a while. There's some schools that, for whatever reason, have problems economically, and you're like, well, how is that so? How could that be? You and I talked about it a week ago, the Desert Storm SI cover. Rest in peace, Sports Illustrated, by the way. What happened since then to Arizona football? We went over the list of coaches they've had, and you just wonder, like, why is Arizona not better? You could say the same thing about Arizona State, but Arizona State has certainly had more success. I don't know. It's a great question how they are in this much of a mess. And I don't know if all of a sudden moving to the Big 12, they'll get some more TV money, but does that solve all their problems? It's a great question.
Number 2.
I like their president out there, but man, oh man, going into a new league like the Big 12, it's just kind of weird. All right, Mike, 12-team playoff next year. We're going to count down for that, but I think one thing that's never happened in college football, I was thinking about it, I was like, when has this ever happened? Because whenever there's been a game of note that's been played north, it's been inside. All your bowl championship, BCS, all that stuff's always in warm weather. We have not really had a championship situation in cold weather. But lo and behold, next year there will definitely be some trips to some Big Ten campuses in December for some Southern teams. Am I maybe overstating this a little bit, or do you think that's something that'll matter? Because the folks up here, they talk about it all the time, like it's the great equalizer. I don't know. I know the NFL in winter is very fun. NFL playoffs in the winter are fun, right. But we've never seen college do that. I can't remember anything like that.
No, you and I aren't old enough to remember some of the old Cotton Bowls that were very significant, and it gets freezing cold in parts of Texas that time of year. But in our lifetime, no, we haven't really seen weather play a major factor. It's a great point. Look, all you have to do is watch the NFL playoffs every year, and you see some of the lower scores, the challenges to complete passes. Thankfully, Buffalo, I don't think, will be in the 12-team playoff anytime soon because I don't like watching teams have to struggle to throw the football in Buffalo winter weather. But certainly some of the other spots, yeah, it could be a factor. Look, I'm all here for it.
South Bend, Columbus, Ann Arbor.
Yeah, no. I mean,
they get cold.
They get cold. But most teams and quarterbacks in particular will tell you it's not the cold, it's the wind. Like, if you can just avoid the wind, because players will I mean, every time I go to a game now in December, there's always that meathead. And I say that not disparagingly. I don't want to get beat up on the sideline by some guy who does this, but it's always some player that it's like 6 degrees and he's got no shirt on and he's just walking out on the field bare-chested like, hey, I ain't feeling it, man. Not an issue. It's an issue when the wind is howling, and I don't like to see a game affected that way. But, yeah, no, I'm all for it. Give me some elements. Give me some cold. Give me a change in overall atmosphere. I think it's another plus of a 12-team playoff where I think if you're critical of this thing now, you're just looking for a reason to be critical. Like, I can't imagine anybody is going to look at this when it happens next year and go, geez, I wish we'd go back to the 4-team, or God forbid, I miss that BCS because it always guaranteed 1 versus 2 according to the Massey poll. No. This is going to be so much better than what we've had.
Number 3.
All right, so I got all these ideas about how to fix bowls, NIL, just the red shirt rules. And I was thinking I was just going to pose you one simple question here, Mike. Do the bowls need saving? Because you've always been pretty firm. They're TV entertainment products that are successful. Even though we don't, I think fans, analysts, people like that, the media kind of have this perception they're not, but they are. So do they even need saving?
There's a sweet spot for problems. Okay, the lower tier bowls, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, the New Mexico Bowl, the Armed Forces Bowl, the Military Bowl, the Cracker Jack Bowl, the Cheez-It Bowl, the Cookie Bowl, the Chips Ahoy Bowl, they're okay because they don't have a bunch of players that are hot prospects in the portal or worried about their NFL draft status. They are truly happy to be there, and they are all in. I know because I've done some of these games, and it's the thing that's most refreshing about it. It's like doing a champ week game in college basketball, 2 mid-majors with the big dance on the line. Then you have the 12-team playoff teams, and obviously they're all in because they got a chance to win a national championship. The sweet spot, or the unsweet spot, as it were, is those other bowl games, the Outback Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, where you've got quality brand name teams, very many of which did not reach the goals that they had in mind, very many of which have players that are already wandering eyes for the portal and for the NFL draft, and there's going to be major, major opt-outs. If you don't do something to fix that, those bowl games are going to suffer.
Agreed.
Number 5.
All right, number 5. A little ACC storyline, Mike, for next year. DJ Uiagalelei, I think I've mastered that. After a year away from Clemson at Oregon State, had a really good year. Probably going to be QB1 at FSU next season. Your thoughts on how he fits in with the Seminoles?
Hey, look, they've got talent all over the place, and they're going to lose a lot in the draft from that team a year ago, particularly at the wide receiver spot. But everybody loves a good redemption story. He was not ready at Clemson, did not perform well, 5-star this, had to follow up the likes of Trevor Lawrence, and it didn't work. Well, then he kind of rebuilt his game and his brand out west, and now he's going to try to do it for the Seminoles. I think it's a great fit. I think it'd be a great story of redemption, and Florida State certainly has it going right now. I'll throw in another one of those terms from the J.C. and Morgan glossary. They are a volcano program. It was a matter of time before they were going to erupt again. It took the right coach in the right situation and some patience, I might add. They have erupted, and I think they're here to stay in terms of a consistent winner, and DJ will fit right in along with that.
All right, that wraps us. That was a fast JC5.
That is a fast-paced JC5. That was no huddle, tempo, just march down the field, found pay dirt. That's the way you do it, folks.
Loyola Marymount basketball in the late 80s. R.I.P. Hank Gathers, by the way.
R.I.P. Hank Gathers. I will be your Bo Kimball.
Bo Kimball. There we go. You shoot your free throws left-handed, man.
That's right. All right, we will shoot free throws right-handed with our man Josh Pate. Josh Pate, who, again, does terrific work for 24/7 Sports, Pate State, along with all the other nifty sayings and expressions that he has concocted over his time. Josh Pate joins us next here on JC and Morgan.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Hey, folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a Mid-Atlantic-based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
South Carolinians, this message is for you, as well as for people in Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. If you think you may need work done to your roof or a new roof altogether, there's one simple name to remember: Elite Roofing and Restoration. South Carolina native Jeremy Johnson has been helping people in the South make sure they have the very best people checking on and building new roofs for over 25 years. Fully licensed, bonded, and insured, they provide the best service possible. Call or email today, 678-781-1998. That's 678-781-1998, or you can go to EliteRoofingGA.com. Schedule a no-hassle, free inspection today. Wind damage, hail damage, or just wear and tear. Don't settle for second best. Let Jeremy Johnson and Elite Roofing and Restoration take care of it all for you today.
Welcome back. It is JC and Morgan here on the final episode in the month of January of 2024. Championship Sunday has come and gone. We're still talking college football all year long, and we're talking it with the purveyor of Late Josh Kick, the Late Kick podcast, storming the nation, I believe 3 times a week. Josh, you correct me if I'm wrong, but again, Josh also a prestigious member now. He joins the Tim Brandos, the Tom Luganbills of the world. Multi-appearances on JC and Morgan. Josh, this is going to change your life. Very few get past the door multiple times, but we welcome you in. It's been too long, and we are more than happy to have you back on the program. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I just worry the attention that comes along with being a multi-time guest on the JC Morgan pod. That's enough to corrupt a lesser man. I hope I rise above that. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, we don't want to see like a behind the music situation back on VH1, where now all of a sudden you turn to a life of debauchery because the fame is just too much for you to handle by being on JC and Morgan twice. So please don't go down that road. It's like an after school special. Stay clean living if you can.
You know, those behind the music episodes, it was so funny how it was like jazz. All you really needed was the beginning and the ending, because the middle was the same. The middle, right. It's interchangeable. It doesn't matter if it's Def Leppard one week, Motley Crue the next week, Fleetwood Mac's all the same.
That's right. They
right.
all have the same trajectory.
It's the same thing. It's the same. Yeah, you could literally have a template and insert the different.
Did Creed go down the bad path? I mean, I like to think Creed was above all that.
I think Creed's story is still being written.
It's still being written. Yeah. The temptation hasn't gotten to Creed just yet, but it's knocking on the door.
Well, I saw the lead singer, Scott, what's his name? So I had to go to this Jackal concert one time in Greenville. I had backstage passes, got to meet Jackal. Not a big Jackal fan. But I'm sitting there in the pregame, or the opening act, and all of a sudden I'm like, that kind of sounds like Creed. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's Higher. I'm like, well, they do a fantastic cover of Higher. Well, then they play My Own Prison. And then they keep going on and on and on. And come to find out, it's like that guy's band. So in front of 40 people in a mosh pit at an empty amphitheater in Greenville, South Carolina, I saw the lead singer for Creed and his new band perform all their entire collection out there. And then Jackal played one song and we left.
I didn't even know Jackal was a band. I am behind the times here.
Like them. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how to describe them. Redneck metal, maybe. I don't know.
Nice. Josh, I know you and JC go back further than most. I know for years JC was talking about and singing your praises. There's this guy in Columbus, Georgia, which, again, shout out to Columbus. That was my big break coming out of college, getting to host a show and do play-by-play on high school football. So the mighty burgeoning metropolis that is Columbus is a special place to me as well. Reese Davis got his start there, another guy from good old Columbus, GA. And we all like just stories of guys who bust it and work in this business and create their own success, that they're not born on third base. I love on your Twitter, right there on the push pin is you basically had $0 to your name as recently as 2019. And here you are now, and obviously have burst on the scene. For those that don't know your story, they just see clips of you and get your takes on college football. Give us a little background on how you've taken this path to where you are.
Yeah, it's fun to tell this story with Shurburtt there, because Shurburtt actually, you talk about behind the scenes backstage pass. Oh, he had a backstage pass to it. So that story, I leave that thing pinned there. For a very specific reason. Number one, it's sort of a mini testimony of mine. But number two, I know a lot of folks out there probably by the millions in a similar position as I was. So I'm out of high school, coming out of high school, and went to college, had no clue what I wanted to do, just kind of floated, and ended up dropping out because I knew I was wasting money. I was not taking school particularly seriously. And just had I don't know. I couldn't have answered the question, who are you? What do you want to be? I couldn't have answered that. So I went and worked construction for a little while, worked a lot of manual labor jobs, but ended up in a fabric warehouse down in Columbus on 12th Street. And I would listen to sports talk radio every day. I knew I loved it. I thought somewhere deep down in me, I probably had a little bit of God-given potential to do it, but I had no clue how to get in the business, had no family in there, had no connections, anything. So I would listen to sports talk radio there in Columbus every day, and I would just badger the program director via Facebook message at the time. Can I just come watch? Because I'd never been in a working studio. I'd never been around live production before. Had no illusions of him putting me on air. I just wanted to come observe. So he let me in there, and his co-host one day, probably about 5 or 10 minutes before airtime, a couple of months in, calls in sick, and he has no other choice. I just get thrown on the air. And never got taken off air, actually. I was on air for the next 2.5 years doing that. And then a general manager from a local TV station down there calls out of the blue. He says, he actually left a voicemail because I sent it to voicemail. He said, I've never met you. You never met me. You don't know me. But I listen to you every afternoon on my drive home. And what you do really kind of mirrors a concept that we want to try, where we want to do a local late night college football talk show on air here on our CW affiliate. Would you like to do it? And I'd never been on TV. So of course I said, yeah. And I go do that and end up being their sports anchor and sports director in time as well. End up elevating to news anchor in time, but I'm all the while doing a local college football show. But the thing about it was Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia, because that was the overlap of the DMA. That's in Columbus. That's the 3 most prominent fan bases. And I really fancied myself as someone who wanted to do regional or national scope content. So I tried it on my own, and it got shot down very quickly because they said, you can't be producing independent content while you're on contract with us to produce college football content, which was, it sucked at the time because I didn't get the business side of it, but it was fair. And so I let about another year go. That was the end of my contract. They wanted to renew me under the same conditions. I turned that down because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I was appreciative, but I knew what I wanted to do. And this was around 2014, 15, 16, when the streaming platforms started to add live components. What you're doing right now, the YouTube lives, the Facebook lives, that was a Berlin Wall moment. because overhead and distribution were no longer the keys in the business. Everyone had overhead and distribution at their fingertips at that point. And so I realized pretty early on that that's a person like me, that's my shot. And they wouldn't let me do it, which was within their right. So I didn't renew my contract there. And come the last day of that contract, general manager and news director sit me down and they say, "What are you going to do? We've essentially been calling your bluff. We didn't think you were going to leave. What are you going to do?" And I told them very honestly, "I'm going to start my own YouTube channel." And their exact words were, "You can't monetize that though. Like, how are you going to make any money?" Because this was at the outset of monetization in the YouTube game. And I didn't have an answer for them. I just knew that was the shot I wanted to take. So I came to an agreement with them to work as an independent contractor to continue doing their local news for fractions on the dollar of what I had been making. But the trade-off that I agreed with them upon is they would give me studio time 3 nights a week to produce my own content out of a working television studio, got all the bells and whistles, production control rooms turned over to me. And at that point, we started doing independently what ended up being Late Kick. Shurburtt would come on the show frequently. A number of guys who still work at either 24/7 or over at On 3 now, they used to come on the show. Shurburtt probably our most reoccurring segment that we would do because we did him once a week. And we scaled that audience from where we'd have 5 people watching to 20 people watching to 50 people watching. And then in 2019, Shannon Terry, who now owns On 3, but at the time was the founder and owner of 24/7, called me and said, "You've never met me, but I want you to come do what you're doing for us." And I came and have been with CBS and 24/7 ever since.
What was the moment? Because you mentioned like it's 5 people, it's 20 people, it's 100. But what was the moment that you felt like, okay, now I've arrived. Now this thing has spread to where we're on the map, and it's not just a niche. I mean, college football in itself is a niche, but there's only so much space to carve out, and there's a lot of traffic there, and you've been able to find a really good spot, a landing spot where people feel comfortable listening to Josh Pate and getting your thoughts on the landscape of college football. When was that? What was that?
The first answer would be the typical answer of, I don't really think we have arrived. And I believe that philosophically. But there was a moment in 2019, and that's when LSU started to make the run, Joe Burrow, Ed Orr's run. I remember the show was doing pretty good numbers, even though we didn't have a national platform, just had the YouTube channel. But we were doing pretty good numbers. But I remember going on the road to a couple of games that year, as many as I could afford to go to. And I remember that I would get recognized at road stadiums outside of just the immediate Auburn, Alabama, Georgia area. And that took me by surprise because I did not think of our show in that scope. I still thought of it as a local, kind of hyper localized Jordan-Hare Stadium, Sanford Stadium, Bryant-Denny Stadium. Maybe some people recognize me, but you start going to Ole Miss, you start going to Gainesville, you start going to LSU. And you get recognized. I guess that was a little bit of it. But I felt like in the summer of 2019, when we kind of jumped on LSU early, and then they started to make that run, a lot of the LSU fan base latched on to that. There's this guy up in Columbus who believed in us long before the national folks did. And I don't know, we kind of rode that wave a little bit, Mike, to where as LSU rose to prominence that year, I noticed our traffic, I noticed our numbers start to really scale a little bit. And from then, I guess in retrospect, that was kicking the snowball down the hill. But at that point, I just knew we're getting some good numbers, we're getting some good traction. I never really understood the scope and trajectory of scaling numbers at that point.
Yeah. Well, you also have a unique, as someone who's spent a lot of time in television, we're so concerned about we've got to dress right and we've got to do there's makeup involved and the visual is such a big part of the medium. You go on there and you're rocking a schmedium white T-shirt every day. You spend a good amount of time in the weight room. You got the bald head. Bald is beautiful, and it's like, okay, Josh is the same look every time. Like it's a brand name. I know what I'm getting with that brand. And you kind of stand out in that visual universe, which I think is part of the appeal. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I do that on purpose. Not to stick it to someone, but to prove a point. Because back when I was in local news, obviously you're working on someone else's time there. So you dress however they tell you to dress, and
Right.
you want to be professional. There's a way they want that presented. And I'm fine with that, even if I don't like dressing that way. But I remember, and I still hold this opinion, thinking it is the dumbest thing in the world to have to dress up in a suit to talk about sports. I've
Right.
always thought that. Now, if I'm working for someone else, or if I'm on someone else's time, suck it up. You do what you got to do.
Mhm.
But I remember having a conversation, some heated, respectful but heated conversations with some superiors of mine about that back in the day, about how people aren't tuning. You're not fooling anyone. Like, why are we trying to take this so seriously? I wouldn't go and eat barbecue with my buddies at 1:00 in the afternoon and talk college football. Why am I wearing one when the only difference is there's a camera between me and them? And so I told myself, you can't do it right now because you're not calling the shots. But if you ever get down the road where you can call shots, prove your point. And so I go above and beyond. Not only am I going to dress down, I'm going to wear the exact same white T-shirt every single time we're on air to prove that, look, we're going to do numbers anyway. It turns out it didn't really matter. All the bells and whistles didn't matter. It's the content that people are attracted to, not how much your wardrobe costs.
Right. What is the brand name of that T-shirt?
Amazon Essentials.
That's fantastic. That's for what does that go for? $14.99? What are we looking at?
Oh, Mike, you can buy them in bulk for $14.99. You're overspending if you spend $14.99 on an Amazon T-shirt.
I'm taking advantage of Amazon Essentials.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, are you ready to dive into some football? Because I thought you one of your tweets out there I saw pretty much defines what is going to be the conversation. And as we talk about on this show, we're so fortunate in this era. College football is become the NFL in that it's a 12-month-a-year sport. I mean, it really is. So we never have things to struggle with content no matter what time of the year it is. And you put out a simple tweet, which is, okay, what is going to be the biggest story of 2024? And honestly, I don't know where to start. I mean, I think the biggest story here lately has been all the money that Ohio State has been spending and what they've been accumulating. And then, of course, we finally know Jim Harbaugh has landed the NFL job that I think most of us thought he would, and that now, you're looking at Sharon Moore following. I mean, you could almost say Harbaugh for Michigan standards was a legend, and that he finally won a national title there, beat Michigan consecutive times. That's legendary status. So some of the biggest story, the SEC expansion, the new TV deal. Where would you start with your very own question on the things you're looking at the most in 2024?
I think the realization of reality is the way I tried to phrase it for acronyms purposes. But everyone knows we've had realignment, but you haven't seen it. Everyone knows Texas and OU joins the SEC. Everyone knows the 4 teams from the West Coast join the Big Ten this year. But you haven't watched it yet. And I think there is a realization coming for people who still want to hold on to that Power 5 or Power 4 kind of idealistic view of college football. They're eventually going to have to face the reality that, wow, like by week 7 of this year, it's going to be so crystal clear to everyone. There is a gulf. There's not a ditch. There's not a gap. There's a gulf between the quality and depth of these 2 conferences and everyone else. So that then gets parlayed into the next thing that I think is going to be a harsh realization. And that is for a lot of folks who wanted college football playoff expansion, realizing what expansion actually means. And I'm not talking about the should we go to 4 or 8 or 12. I mean, given the 12-team field, the format, the devil in the details, I think is where a lot of folks who supported expansion are going to be caught really off guard when they all of a sudden realize if they don't change the auto bid format, you've got a 6-6 format here. You've got, by your own admission by this point, 2 power conferences out there in the SEC and Big Ten. Mike, that means we got 4 more auto bids to give away before we ever even talk about the next best team in the Big Ten or the SEC. And even in the former landscape of college football, I thought auto bids were ridiculous. But in the future landscape of college football, you're talking about a minimum, given the current format, of 2 G5 teams making the playoff. in a world where the term G5 is infinitely more watered down than it was in the old format. And here's the real kicker, if that doesn't already get you, they don't have to be ranked in the top 12. It's just the highest ranked conference champs. So you could have a world where LSU goes 10-2, 9-3 in their 3 losses or the top 10 teams. And then you've got UTSA ranked 18th, but because they're one of the 6 highest rated conference champs, they're going to the playoff. And you got Vegas telling you LSU would be a 24.5 point favorite against them, but that doesn't matter. And so I'm very curious about a lot of the folks who were proponents of expansion. Once you see what expansion actually consists of, how do we feel about it? How quickly is it rectified? Do people look at that and think it's a problem? Or do they just worship inclusion for the sake of inclusion? Competition, strength of schedule, be damned. Like, how is that going to be interpreted? To me, that's a great unknown.
It's a great question. I'll just offer one theory on that. And I always try to remind people, because you still have people convinced the NCAA runs college football. The NCAA does not run college football. It runs college basketball. The NCAA is about inclusion. College football is about what's best for me, my conference. Those folks that run it, and Petiti and Sankey, are going to truly be almost like the co-commissioners of the sport, in my opinion. They are going to determine some of these new rules and regulations on the playoff format. So to your point, I'd be shocked if that stays in place very long, the top 6 conference champ. I just don't see it. There's not an appetite for it, and furthermore, there's not a vehicle like the NCAA powerful enough to push for it. Instead, the people that run it, the people that run these mega conferences, are going to say, no. We're not going to lose a 5th or 6th SEC Big Ten team to your example, Texas San Antonio. We ain't doing that. Right. I think that's going to be the first thing that gets changed.
Yeah, the other question there, dovetailing off that, is I don't think most people realize the playoffs' fate beyond the next 2 years is totally undecided. Now, there was a Pete Thamel report in the last few weeks that maybe you're approaching a deal where ESPN acquires the exclusive rights to the playoff, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the actual structure. Is it going to be 12 teams? Are you going to have the 6 and 6? Is it going to be 5 and 7? Like, what's the format going to be? And I'm like you. I don't see any world. In fact, I'd go a step beyond that. They have the power to go total rogue ball and say, we're not going to sign off on a format with any auto bids. And they can take that stance because they know they themselves don't need the auto bid. They'll get multiple teams in anyway. The less auto bids, the better it is for the SEC and the Big Ten. And at that point, what do the other conferences do? If they really want to put all their cards on the table, do the other conferences say, well, you guys got all the sway in the room, we'll sign off on it? Or do they say, no, we're not going to agree to this destruction, and as a result, you got a stalemate at the playoff table? And at that point, then do the SEC and Big Ten say, all right, you want to do that? Our counter is we take our ball and we go play in our own world that we create for ourselves. So I think there's a haze, like when you're about to drive into fog. That, to me, that's what the future of college football and college athletics look like here on multiple fronts. I just happen to think that particular front is going to be the biggest domino that knocks down every other domino that falls.
What was your reaction when Saban announced his retirement?
I was just outside of Publix, downtown Nashville. I was very surprised. I rushed home to drop stuff off because I had perishables in the car. And then I headed over to the studio. I thought to myself, not so much the Saban portion of it. I thought about the gigantic ripple effect that is tantamount to like an asteroid landing in an ocean as it impacted college football. And that's still being felt. And I also, in the immediate aftermath, I thought to myself, have we seen the last of anyone doing what he did? I think the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, and I ended up talking about it on the show that night, what it was like for me to grow up down in the South. And Paul Bryant had already passed away before I was born, but I would hear stories about him. And I looked at him almost sort of like a Greek mythological figure. He seemed like, less than a god, but more than a man to me because of the way he was deified and the way that the aura around his name and presence was presented. And I always remember growing up thinking, I missed that. I didn't get to experience that. Nothing like that'll ever happen again. And then you realize it happened again. And you had a front row seat for it as a fan. And if you were able to be behind the curtain, like we are, you actually got to spend time with the guy. You got to soak in knowledge. You got to just observe it from the closest vantage point one can observe it from. And so my thought, and this is how my mind works, my first thought was, oh man, like 30, 40 years from now, they'll talk about this day. But unlike the Paul Bear Bryant situation, I'll actually be able to be the guy telling the little kids, yeah, I was there. Yeah, you want to hear about it? I was there. So that's where my mind went.
We have a glossary on this show. You have kind of one of your own terms that you invent, if you will, out of thin air and very catchy. You have one for Bama fans, the modern day younger Bama fan, the trust fund fans, kind of the fans that grew up on third base, just watching their team compete for a national championship seemingly every single year. That being said, like the Kalen DeBoer hire, it makes all the sense in the world. And he got my vote for Home Depot Coach of the Year back before Nick Saban was even a thought to retire. I think it's a great hire, but I also acknowledge it could fail. It could absolutely fail. And no one is going to be able to follow up what Nick Saban did. So I'm just curious, I'm sure you get a lot of trash talk from Auburn fans. Oh, this is Brian Harsin 2.0, which is ridiculous. But just your overall impressions of the hire and give me a little forecast that you see for Alabama football in this new regime.
Yeah, so twofold. I couldn't think any more highly of Kalen DeBoer than I do. I think he'll be a success there. And the big question, Mike, that people have from what I can tell is, can he recruit? And I get why that's a question. Number one, you're coming into a geographical territory you've never coached in. And number two, there's not a track record. Like if Dan Lanning took the job, he has track record of recruiting at a high level at Oregon. So people would think it's a copy paste, just do what you're doing, do it at Alabama. The funny thing is the guy who's gone 3-0 against Lanning is doubted because he can't recruit. And the ultimate job of recruiting is to get players to beat the other team. But I do get what they're saying. All right, so here's my follow-up. When people say he won't be able to recruit, I ask him, what do you think it takes to recruit in the South? And they will inevitably say, oh, you got to know people, man. You got to know people. And I agree with that on the surface, but the spirit of that, I disagree with that. I think they're putting the emphasis on the wrong word. They say you got to know people. And I think you got to know people. I think you got to be relatable. I think you got to be a grinder. But I also think when you walk in a room, there has to be this magnetic quality that draws people to you. He's got that. All right, DeBoer's got that. You'll never doubt that. So the only other question is, do you possess the relentless desire to work? That's what costs a lot of guys when they come down here, is they realize, yeah, it was hard work at the other place, but there's no grind like the SEC schedule. And I'm talking about off the field. I don't think DeBoer's turned off from that. Like he is that. When you raise the hood on him, he is that. So if you're a grinder, if you are relentless and you are good with people in time, you're going to be a good recruiter in the South. The other trade-off with him is I don't know how many times we watched him beat a team in his career with the second best roster on the field. So I don't probably need a top 3 class from him every cycle. I need him to be a solid top 8 to 10 recruiter, and then take your chances on Saturdays, because I think we may come to find that he may have the best head coach OC DC combo in the SEC. And if they've got enough talent there, the drop-off will always be a drop-off from Nick Saban, because no one's duplicating that ever in this sport. But I think they'll be very competitive. And the expectation of Bama crashing to earth, I don't think it's such a founded expectation as it is a wish from a lot of people. So you're right, though. There is a chance that it fails. I just don't think it's going to fail because Kalen DeBoer got overwhelmed and couldn't process how to win in the SEC.
Arguably the two programs with the most resources that had open jobs this year were A&M and Bama. It's interesting because you mentioned recruiting, and that is a big part of it. But they both hire guys like Elko. If you're just talking pure football coach, they can go anywhere in the country and win. It seemed to me like that was more of a focus. And I said that. I said A&M needs to go hire a football coach to heck with everything else. Do you think with the transfer portal and the fact that, man, you could lose 20% of your roster every single year, and you're not going to know personnel from year to year, and you're going to have to kind of go find guys and patch holes and stuff with the way it's going? Do you think there's more of an emphasis with administrators on guys that can actually coach the game on Saturdays, more so than maybe some of the hype guys we've seen, or the guy with the big name, or the guy that's got this big long recruiting list? Because Bama and A&M definitely hired straight up football coaches.
Yeah, I think it's very, very intentional. The direction that a lot of hires will go in the SEC and the Big Ten. I think in the coming years, you will see a trend with the most well-resourced programs in America to shift emphasis from recruiting / talent acquisition capability to X's and O's CEO organizational structure capability. The reason is not because they think talent isn't important anymore. They just think that's more transactional now. If you've got deep pockets, to call it like it is, they think there's not a ton of talent and skill in just going and buying a roster. If you can afford it, you can afford it. And if you can't, you can't. But if we can afford it, it's not, it's not calculus. It's ABC 1, 2, 3. We're going to go buy guys. At that point, we get them on campus. The edge we can give ourselves is we can out-scheme you on Saturday. Now, as well as I do, in the South forever, the saying has been totally inverted. The saying has been, you don't out-scheme guys in the South. It's about having the players. And it always will be about having the players. It's just the way you get the players has changed a little bit, to which someone in the comments will say, are you saying money was never a part? Are you saying transactions were never a part of talent acquisition? No, I'm not saying that. But anyone in their right mind who thinks the way it's being done right now is just the way it's always been done, it just displays their utter lack of knowledge of the inner workings of college football. It's never worked like this. And also, it's never been legal, or at least legal to the point where you've got the free reign to do whatever you want to do. So if I can go buy rosters, and I know my head coach can do that, I'm not placing emphasis on that so much anymore. I'm going to place emphasis on what you do with them once you get them here.
We all have the benefit of spending time and talking with coaches. And I think it's safe to say we all hear a lot of the same things about the way this thing is set up right now with no guardrails is an absolute show, okay? The coach, it's not, and I hate when people take that and twist it into, oh, you just don't want players to get money.
Right.
No, that's not it at all. I've never run into a coach that doesn't want players to get compensation. And we all know it's been happening for decades and decades, but now it's obviously out in the open. But when you don't have any structure, and when you have players essentially acting like pros but without contracts, excuse me, so you can threaten to leave anytime and do, you take the bag and then you just go for another bag a year later. That's not the way the NFL is set up. So it's completely upside down. And I know for a fact there are some very powerful people in the sport that have been trying to get people in Congress to do something, anything. And I know that there's even talk about possibly disbanding from the NCAA altogether. There's a lot of things that are going on right now that aren't getting the same light of day as the other stories. I guess my question, Josh, for you and on your take of what is the next shoe to drop? Like when is this thing going to get modified? How will it get modified? Are we going to have this same conversation 3 years from now where it's just clearly the wild, wild west?
Oh, boy. Do we have 3 hours for me to answer this question?
Is
our heart out before lunchtime? Yeah.
We don't have a heart out on JC and Morgan. We just go where we go.
We don't have hard outs. We don't have easy answers. I do think, all right, so this is going to sound gloom and doomy on the back end. So let me lead it with sunshine. I don't think we've ever had an environment where the power players at the college football table are more motivated to get it right and to fix things. because I believe that enough people are bent sideways about the current structure or lack thereof that the motivation is there and the right signatures would be able to be gotten on the paper. The question would, of course, be, well, what are the fixes? And I think it's multi-layered, but at the core of it all is very simple. You've got to decide what the status of student athletes are, because they're not student athletes. So you got to decide, you go in the employment route. Can you collectively bargain without that? At which point we need a fourth box on here so we can get the JC and Morgan lawyer to say yes, no, yes, yes, no. But I think
Jackie Childs on line 4.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll text him. But once you get that question answered, in theory, everything else starts falling into place. It's just that answering that question is the hard part. And the reason I say everything else falls into place is because very obviously, if you've got concessions or agreement or walk in lockstep with the players on issues like compensation and therefore issues like NIL and portal, well, you can get their signature on a piece of paper that includes guardrails and includes minimum service time in exchange for us giving you maybe a share of media rights revenue, which I've always thought was the Pandora's box in a good way to all this. I do think in the very near future, there will come a time where if Mike Morgan or JC Shurburtt or Josh Pate sign a scholarship to play linebacker at Purdue or to be a wide receiver at South Carolina, I know just by nature of me being a scholarship athlete at that school, there is a minimum amount of money I'm guaranteed from a revenue sharing perspective. Now, what I get on the NIL market above and beyond that, it's up to me. But that's what the spirit of NIL is supposed to be, not inducement pay for play as it is right now. How much will a certain amount ever be enough? What legal authority do you have to oversee that? Who's the governing body? Those are the unanswerable questions right now, because if you think about this, I had someone put it like this to me the other day from the legal community, and it was a great point. They said, the letters NFL mean something. The letters NBA mean something. NHL, WWE, UFC, they are sports or sports entertainment, but they are also organizations. They also have a front office with an address and a governing board and a commissioner. The letters CFB don't mean anything. They don't have any of that. If I were to send a letter to college football, where would I send it? It would just get returned to sender. And so in the future, whether you have the traditional setup of a commissioner's office or not, I think that once you get those signatures on board and once you have it get bad enough, and once you start losing good people more so than we already are because of a lack of structure, then I think change will happen. That's the status and nature of life. Once things get bad enough, change will happen. I used to always get told that about food I didn't want to eat. Once you're hungry enough, you'll eat it. That's the end of the story.
Closing minutes here with Josh Pate. Again, the podcast is The Late Kick. You can catch that on YouTube and a number of other formats now as it continues to grow in popularity. Josh, you've got the Amazon T-shirt. Well, maybe you don't, because that's got an Iowa State logo on. I don't know where that came from. Yeah, Brock Purdy in the house. Yep. Let's get an Amazon Karnak prediction hat on for maybe some other time. Tell me where you think. Let's come up with a timetable here. 2 years from now, 2026. Where will Florida State be?
Oh man, I don't know if it'll be by 26. But I think by 26, the news will have happened that they are headed somewhere other than the ACC. I don't know how. Well, so I'll save you time on the back end. I have no idea how it happens. I just don't. It's so untenable. It feels so toxic. You've got them trying to get out, and you got the conference saying, no, you can't get out. And by the way, if you keep talking, we're going to punish you punitively more for even wanting to get out. It feels like a circus animal. And at some point, man, that's a lion. If it really wants to break free, it's going to break free. What worries me is being right on a prediction I had about 2 years ago, which was at the time talking about the Pac-12. But I thought the environment's ripe for private equity to get involved in college football. And I thought at the time it would be in a sense that someone would come in and in a roundabout way purchase the Pac-12. It turns out no one did that, but I think someone may very well do it to a program like Florida State, because it's not it's possible, Mike, if you want to go buy the New York Giants, technically there's a path to do that. You can't buy a college football team, but really you can. Phil Knight owns Oregon, but he doesn't own Oregon. T. Boone Pickens owned Oklahoma State. He didn't own Oklahoma State. Someone with more self-serving interests, Josh Pate Entertainment, if I had billion-dollar backing, I could go and bankroll Florida State. And in turn, I could have ad placement run during their broadcast. I could have ad placement in their stadium. I could get all kinds of return on that investment because I could use them essentially as a marketing and advertising vehicle for myself. No one's done that yet. It doesn't mean someone won't do it. I would prefer that we not have to go that route, but I fear we probably will go that route. And the reason I say I fear it is not because I don't want Florida State to have all the freedom in the world. I think we've seen a million times before. This would just be 1,000,001 of the danger of entities like this getting in bed with private equity to bring an ends to their means.
It would be the ultimate. I call it in the case of SMU with what they did, like the ultimate cojones on the table move. Like, we don't need your stinking money. We'll take care of everything. You just let us in the league, and financially we got this. That's what SMU did. And I wonder if Florida State has enough in the coffers to circumvent everything else and just say, yeah, no, we don't need an equal piece of the pie. They're not going to get that. And we'll go ahead and pay the fines and everything else with grant and rights. Do they have that kind of money the way SMU just pulled that off to get into the ACC? I think that's going to be really intriguing. We'll end on a light note here, Josh. We do a little thing called Five or Dimer. A rewatchable movie, a remote dropper. If you've seen it at least 5 times, it's a $5, 10 or more dimer. Sometimes it's even a Ben Franklin. I put Jaws, Shawshank Redemption in that list. Twister. You're a movie guy. You got a couple of dimers for us?
Twister is my dimer.
Twister?
I love Twister.
Wow.
Yes, that is him.
That.
Yeah, he loves that movie.
Wow.
Man.
I saw that in Columbus, Georgia, in a movie theater, because that's when it came out when I was rocking WDAK.
The Carmike Cinema's there. They had to repair the walls, because obviously I saw Twister in theaters in Columbus too. We may have been at the same showing.
Yeah.
they had to repair the walls. There was a big article in the Ledger Inquirer down there about how that was one of the first movies that came out with the full Dolby Digital, whatever they did to upgrade the audio, and it cracked one of the walls in the Carmike Cinema's movie theater. And I thought Twister and the folks in the production company missed a golden opportunity to use that as marketing for the VHS release. Hey, man, we nearly tore down movie theaters. Or imagine what this will be like in your living room.
That's fantastic. And somebody in chat row mentioned that they're the whole cast, the late Bill Paxton. Somebody mentioned Helen Hunt. I used to make the analogy with Arkansas football 10 years ago in the SEC. They were like the Helen Hunt of the Southeastern Conference, who you're not sure if you find her attractive, and if so, to what extent. That to me was Arkansas football. Like, you're not sure if they're really good or how they fit or to what extent. It was just kind of this big cloud of nebulous matter. That was for Helen Hunt for me back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
You want to know something else, Chris? Is number one, I do have a tornado on my shirt this morning.
Yes, you do. Cyclone, Dave. And you've been there, right? You've been to Ames, right? You now get to go everywhere. Yep. That's the beauty of your job now.
Yeah, I love Iowa State. I mean, you've got a tornado for the logo, and you've got Hulk Hogan color scheme. I don't know how. That's the Venn diagram for me is a perfect circle on Iowa State. But Helen Hunt was in Twister. But Jamie Gertz was also in Twister in sort of a supporting role. And I think the single wildest bit of trivia from Twister is not the late Bill Paxton or the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's a star-studded cast. Really? Jamie Gertz is in that movie. She's now part owner of the Atlanta Hawks.
Yes, I see her at Hawks games. Yes, she went from the stunning girlfriend on again, off again of Andrew McCarthy and Robert Downey Jr. in Less Than Zero, which is like this dark movie. If you haven't seen this, Josh, you need to rent it. Less Than Zero is we're a little older than you. It's a late 80s movie, and it's the total talk about trust fund kids in California. but one of them, Robert Downey, which would obviously be a parallel path to his real life, he turns into a drug head, and his life just goes spiraling out of control. And you've got the Bengals soundtrack, Susanna Hoffs going Hazy Shade of Winter, and you've got McCarthy. Jamie Gertz, that was the introduction to her. She's also the one that wouldn't spare a square in Seinfeld.
Right. That's
so
right.
let's give her proper due on the cameo on that show. The more you make me think about this, I've probably seen Twister at least 10 times on cable. That is a dimer.
Well, the way I sell it is, so I'm actually a storm chaser. So of course it appeals to me for different reasons. But
wait a minute. You're a storm chaser. You're out there chasing storms?
Oh, this is a whole other show.
Hobby, man. Yeah.
How did I not know this?
Look, that's why I love college football, because it allows me to be free in the spring to go chase. I'll be all over the place. But so that my part 3 appearance on this show, that's what we can dive into.
Oh, definitely.
But what I tell people who want to nitpick from an atmospheric scientific approach, a Twister didn't get this right or that right, whatever. It's a movie, man. We're not talking about convective available potential energy here. Like, what we're talking about is we want to nail the culture and vibe. And as someone who does this stuff every year, never has Hollywood captured the true essence and vibe of something more than they captured what it's like to be on the road storm chasing as they did in Twister. Unbelievable. It's like a shot-for-shot remake, running into your buddies at the gas station, grabbing food when you can. It's very much like a fraternity locker room mentality, except you're chasing tornadoes and you could die at any moment.
Maybe the best fake flying cow scene in cinema history coming from that movie.
Well, at least top 5. At least top 5 flying cow scenes.
And you've got me thinking about the cast. Wasn't Ferris Bueller's buddy, who was also now in Succession, he's in that movie.
Cameron, yeah.
Cameron.
I don't know the actor's name. I just call him Cameron.
Yeah,
Cameron,
the guy who plays Jonas, he's got a weird name. He's in a lot of stuff, too. He was in the Saw movie.
Okay.
The guy that ends up getting killed at the end, spoiler alert. But there's a lot. There are a lot of big time names on the cast.
Yeah, man, good call. We've never even brought that movie up, and I make the analogy. Now, you're probably a bigger fan of it, being the storm chaser that you are. But like when I say this about Roadhouse, I acknowledge Roadhouse is a 2-star movie, but I'll watch it every time it's on. You can love a 2-star movie. You can acknowledge it's not a great written film. There's not great acting. The plot is predictable, and still love the movie for what it is.
Where's my car? That's essentially what you're talking about.
Yeah, there you go. I can't think of a better note to end it on. Josh, again, and I know this certainly comes from JC because you guys go way back. Couldn't be happier for your success. It's the kind of story that we root for. Keep up the outstanding work. We welcome you again to the prestigious multi-guest performance here on JC and Morgan, and hope to have you back soon.
I appreciate it as always, guys.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks,
Josh Pate, the one and only of the Late Kick podcast.
So it was Carrie Ewells from The Princess Bride was Jonas, and
oh wow,
yeah, he's been
that's
a lot.
Next level.
He's been some different stuff. Yeah, Phil Mad Dog came in on the private chat here and filled us in on that.
Nothing gets by Mad Dog. If it gets by everybody else, Mad Dog is gonna catch those rather arcane references.
Yes,
that's great stuff. Twister. We have not done Twister.
When he said, it didn't surprise me because I knew he was a storm chaser, but that just was kind of like a miniature Five and Dimer, but was so complete that it's like we actually did Five and Dime, like the whole thing today.
I know. Which we won't have time to do much more on the other side, but I do want to get to. I have an interesting thing I'm going to toss your way, JC, in reference to Alabama and Michigan replacing their national championship legendary coaches. How that's worked out for programs in the past. The results might surprise you. We'll take a final timeout. We'll be back with more JC and Morgan on the other side.
Chicken cock originated in Kentucky, like so many other bourbons. And so the resurrection of it, Paris, Kentucky, that's the county seat of Bourbon County. So much of this whiskey was being made in that Bourbon County, put on ships and barges and shipped down Ohio, down to Mississippi, and got to New Orleans, where it got distributed all over the world. And people kept saying, well, hey, I want some more of that whiskey from Bourbon County. And so that's how bourbon whiskey got its name. And chicken cock originated actually in Paris, Kentucky, which is today Bourbon County.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. Site Pro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. Site Pro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call Site Pro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com. South Carolinians, this message is for you, as well as for people in Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. If you think you may need work done to your roof or a new roof altogether, there's one simple name to remember: Elite Roofing and Restoration. South Carolina native Jeremy Johnson has been helping people in the South make sure they have the very best people checking on and building new roofs for over 25 years. Fully licensed, bonded, and insured, they provide the best service possible. Call or email today, 678-781-1998. That's 678-781-1998, or you can go to EliteRoofingGA.com. Schedule a no-hassle, free inspection today. Wind damage, hail damage, or just wear and tear. Don't settle for second best. Let Jeremy Johnson and Elite Roofing and Restoration take care of it all for you today.
It is JC and Morgan for the final segment. Our thanks again to Josh Pate, giving us some great stuff and great time here on the program. Again, the beauty of the off season for us is that we have more time to get guests on, and we've had an amazing track record of getting some really good people to join the show. Many of whom JC and I know personally, some of whom, quite frankly, we don't. We just took a shot at, and they were kind enough to give us some great minutes. JC, of course, I know you go back a long ways with Josh, and again, you, in addition to your many talents, you have an ability to see talent, and you have been high on Josh's work for a long time, and obviously his perseverance has paid off, and you certainly saw that early on.
Absolutely. And I kind of just like hearing you guys have a conversation because, I've been on with both of you through the years,
Right.
And I just think it's because you guys kind of you're like-minded in a lot of ways. And so I'm just entertained when you guys have a conversation.
It's funny.
I had one call. I just sat here and shut up and listened because I was it's just like watching a TV show I like. It's probably a dimer. It's a dimer for me.
A diver for you. Well, you said this years ago, and you're like, no, Mike, he speaks your language. Like you're gonna like this guy. This was before Josh, got the expanded platform, and I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't know him, but I knew Columbus, and again, we both had that in common, and I knew he loved college football and movies, which we talk a lot of on this show. So, you were spot on that. And again, we'll get Josh back on again soon. I only want people to come on, by the way, that actually enjoy coming on. It's not I don't want a big name that feels like they're doing us a personal favor to give us the time. Like if that's your thing, don't bother. We'll get somebody else.
We've had very few of those, though. I could
very
even
few.
think of
No,
maybe one or two, but I think we've gotten.
We're batting near 1,000. We really are.
Even a guy like Ryan Leaf, who doesn't know us from Adam, he was really cool.
Well, the only reason, he was fantastic. Now, I got Ryan because I did a game with him.
That's right.
Oklahoma.
Okay, my bad.
And so that was kind of the introduction for me to Ryan. But you go back to our quarterback derby. I know Greg McElroy, but we haven't done a game together. I know Tim Couch, but I don't know him that well. Shane I've known for a while, Shane Matthews, Who else did we get on that thing? I mean, it was like one great former quarterback
Lugs,
after another.
I mean, I know Lugs and Mac. I covered McElroy as a recruit, and I used to work with Luganville, who's
me too. Yep,
the man. He's the man. By the way, there's
awesome.
an H&R Block commercial on Instagram now with a cartoon character that's like the H&R Block guy that looks just like an avatar of Tom Luganville. I swear to God. and you haven't seen it yet, but you will, and you're gonna laugh. I promise.
That's awesome.
And
we'll get.
And it looks just like him. It's like
it looks just like him.
Maybe a little more built than Luganville. This thing's kind of got like Popeye arms, but the same haircut, glasses.
Does he have the cowboy boots that Lugs likes to wear on TV?
I didn't look at the shoes. I should have.
My introduction to Lugs was us doing a MAC game 12 years ago for ESPN, like at Kent State. It came down to a game-winning field goal. That was when you spend 2.5 days in the Rust Belt in November, you get to know someone well. So that's always good. Yeah, people on chat row commenting the Leaf interview was stellar. Quantrell, any chance of getting Billis back on? We can get Jay back on. I mean, Jay gave us. He emptied his bag of thoughts on NIL and everything else, and you kind of know where he stands. I mean, he's been pushing for all this for a long time. He's been a big advocate for players' rights, and I don't think he's one that believes there should be any. He's kind of in the line of another guest that we've had on that I've worked with, Andy Staples. Those guys believe, hey, look, the market takes care of itself. There's nothing wrong with everything that's going on. There's not a problem. I respectfully disagree with both of them. You can have your cake, but you don't have to eat it too. Like, you can go ahead and give the players money. Again, like I said before, I don't know anybody who's against that. But you also need some structure. You don't want the utter chaos that we have now and just poaching players left and right, not honoring any type of commitment to the program you go to. Well, coaches, stop comparing them to coaches. It's a different setup, a different situation. And coaches do have multi-year contracts, and there has to be bots and everything else. So I don't want to go down that path just now, but yeah, both of those guys are kind of cut from the same cloth and on how they feel about it. And, of course, you got Josh's thoughts on that as well. Before we wrap things up, one thing I want to run by you, JC, before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody, one of our great sponsors, Site Pro Rentals. When renting equipment, important to have a local, easy-to-do business with friends in the industry who carry the only the newest equipment and create efficiency for you and your project job site. The team at Site Pro Rentals can do just that. When reliability, service, and transparent pricing matter, you need to use Site Pro Rentals. Give them a call today, 972-RENT-NOW, 972-736-8669. We've got some really good sponsors in that space. Jeremy Johnson of Elite Roofing and Restoration. You see the phone number for him scrolling if you're watching YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all that jazz. Very fortunate to have some guys that can help out anybody that needs work on their home or office, etc. Okay, so Saban gone, Harbaugh officially gone since the last time you and I were on, and not surprisingly, I mean, this is what we all predicted. Two things. Harbaugh, Chargers, Sharon Wright gets the job. Okay. So Sharon Wright, and I did a little deep dive on him, and I won't go too deep, but I mean, I had to, honestly, I didn't know much about him. He played JUCO, and then he played 2 years as an offensive lineman for Stoops at Oklahoma. He was an assistant at Central Michigan, and then went on to, obviously, Michigan, predominantly as a tight ends coach, and then, associate head coach. And obviously he was the interim coach for Michigan during the time that Jim Harbaugh was suspended, which it seemed like every other week last year. So Sharon Moore gets the job there, and of course we talked about Kalen DeBoer getting the job at Alabama. So this is just a few. I was looking it up, JC. Legends, and I'll put Harbaugh in the legend category because what he did for Michigan football is legendary. He didn't stay as long as Saban, and no one's ever going to do what Saban. That's the GOAT. There's legends, and then there's the GOAT. Two different categories. Here's a list of legends that were replaced and how it went. And you can give a letter grade with this if you want to. Jim Tressel replaced John Cooper. Well, that went pretty well, right? I mean, he won a national championship before the whole tattoo gate and that derailed. That would now be laughed at as a violation. Like, none of that would be a problem. None of that would be a problem at all. Spurrier replaced Lou Holtz at South Carolina. I'd say that went pretty well, right? Tom Osborne replaced Bob Devaney at Nebraska. Well, that went really well. Now, what after that, it was Solich? Not so well. But then again, since Solich, it's gone much, much worse. So Solich is probably saying, hey, I wasn't so bad, was I? Who replaced – huh?
He won a bunch of games at Ohio U.
That's right.
Yeah.
Success in the back. Mike Bellotti replaced by Chip Kelly. Remember, Bellotti was doing some good things at Oregon. It's like, oh, shoot, we just lost Bellotti. And then Chip Kelly took it to another level.
Yeah, Bellotti was like there were three builders at Oregon, and it took 20-something years. Rich Brooks was there from 77 to 94, got to the Rose Bowl in 94, hung it up. Bellotti was on his staff, took over for him, and then Bellotti hired Chip Kelly from the University of New Hampshire to come be his OC, and then they promoted Chip Kelly, and Chip really is the one that got them to the promised land.
Barry Alvarez replaced by Brett Bielema at Wisconsin. Remember, Brett Bielema did good things at Wisconsin. That's why Arkansas gave him a huge bag of money to poach him away and get him to Fayetteville. That went well. And even Les Miles replacing Nick Saban at LSU. Say what you want about Les. He had people fooled there for a while. He's eating grass. He's winning some championships. He won a national championship. Some people say anybody can win one at LSU. That may be true, but for a while there, Les had it going on. He had success. He's beaten Alabama on a fairly good basis, playing for SEC titles, playing for national titles. And I'll throw another one out there, Jimbo Fisher. I mean, before it went sideways in Tallahassee, he replaced the legend in Bobby Bowden. And overall, it went fairly well before it fizzled out. And then, of course, we know what happened. It goes to A&M, and it really fizzled out. Then you have guys like Bob Davie, Will Muschamp. Larry Coker did win a national title at Miami, but it didn't exactly work great. And then there's a whole list of ones that did not go well at all. Ron Zook replacing Spurrier at Florida.
Charlie Strong replacing Mac Brown at Texas.
Charlie Strong.
Stellar.
Ray Goff at Georgia. Ooh.
Yeah, Ray Goff and Jim Donnan. Jim Donnan was better than Ray Goff, but Goff was not good.
Everybody was better than Ray Goff.
And then, man, oh man, I mean, you can keep going on and on and on with things that have not worked out. I mean, you know, but I'll give you another one that you missed. Urban Meyer replaced Jim Tressel. And that worked out pretty well.
That worked out, yes.
You know, Tressel's probably Tressel would probably still be coaching had all that stuff not happened.
Had all that stuff not happened.
Yeah,
people loved him.
Rolling.
The sweater and yeah.
Gary Moeller replaced Bo Schembechler and was kind of but then Lloyd Carr was also on that staff and eventually replaced Gary Moeller.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Notre Dame hadn't gotten it right really since then. Brian Kelly was a nice era.
Yeah,
but
Bob Davie was. I'm convinced
disaster.
Bob Davie was.
Tyrone
David
Willingham
Puttyish.
was a disaster after his first year, and Charlie Weiss. I mean, see, all these guys have good first years. Like Willingham had a good first year. Weiss had a great first year in 2005, and then they just tank out.
Yeah,
Marcus Freeman just gets progressively worse, I think. But anyway, so I'm trying to think, who replaced Don McPherson at Syracuse? Paul Pasqualoni did.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
And he did all right.
Right.
He lasted a long time. You know, Randy Edsel leaves UConn the first time, and it went straight. I think Pasqualoni replaced him.
Right.
That didn't work out.
Lane Kiffin replaced Carroll at Southern Cal. Not very successsul.
Not very successful. I mean, you know, so Ralph Friedgen hangs it up at Maryland. He had a nice winning period.
Oh yeah.
I don't even remember it. So James Franklin was his coach in waiting, but James went and took the Vandy job. And so I don't remember even who they ended. It was whoever they had before they had DJ Durkin. They hired Randy Edsel.
That's right.
So that didn't work out. So, George Welsh leaves Virginia, and Al Groh has some good years, but then it does not sustain. Justin Fuente was a disaster at Virginia Tech, and if you'd have told me that would happen, I said you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it's back and forth, and
it's back and forth. Wanted to give you examples of both.
And it's because a lot of people are like, you never want to follow the guy. Well, it's worked out for some people. I mean, it's worked out.
Well, it depends how the guy leaves the program too, right? Like, do you leave the program in an abject mess, or do you leave it in fine shape? Like taking over for Nick Saban at Alabama right now, that's a pretty sweet gig. But taking over for Florida State when Bobby Bowden's clearly it was going down the you-know-what. And obviously Penn State with Joe Pa, with the added level of drama there, that was nobody was going to be uber successful. It was set up to fail, and Bill O'Brien did the best he could in Happy Valley. But when you follow a legend, is he giving you the house in mint condition, or is he giving you a house of disrepair that needs all kinds of redos and, do you need to plow it down and completely start over from the studs?
And sometimes it's the coach, that you hire. Kansas State goes and hires Ron Prince. They were awful for 2 years, 3 years.
Ron Prince.
All right, so Snyder has to come back because his family's name's on the stadium. He coaches 8 more years there. Yes. Well, the second time they hire Chris Kleiman, who's similar in resume to a Kalen DeBoer, has won at South Dakota State, North Dakota State, wherever. And look, Kansas State's still Kansas State. They're still the same. They have not missed a beat under Chris Kleiman. So sometimes it depends on who you get too, and if the guy knows what he's doing, and you're not kind of reaching. You think about getting Ron Zook to replace Steve Spurrier at Florida, or Ray Perkins to replace Bear Bryant at Alabama. Those were reaches, man. Those are guys that we like Ron or we like Ray. Let's just give him the job.
Terry Bowden at Auburn replacing Pat Dye. Now it started off well.
Gangbusters.
How about 21-1 on probation in your first 22 games?
If it hadn't been for that probation, man, Auburn's basically gotten screwed out of 2 potential national championships in my lifetime. But you kind of look around and see the guys that like Lincoln Riley replaced Bob Stoops. Everybody thinks it's great, and they did keep going to the playoffs. But at the end of the day, was that really? I don't know. Yeah. That's kind of one of those enigmatic things. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it is the point I think you're trying to make is everybody says, it'll never work out. But there's a lot of examples out there where it did.
Sometimes it does.
I'll give you a basketball one, the greatest one of all time.
Mm-hmm. Dean
Smith replaced Frank McGuire at North Carolina.
Yeah.
Young Dean Smith. That worked out fine for them.
That worked out pretty well.
Hey, Bill Self replaced Roy Williams at Kansas. That's worked out pretty well.
Very well. Yeah.
So you never know.
And Jay Wright at Villanova.
Yeah, Jay Wright, boy, he's he replaced Massimino. No, Steve Lapis was the coach.
There's a gap there. Yes, I guess
there was
a
gap between Raleigh and
Lapis wasn't terrible. Lapis he had NCAA tournaments, but he wasn't Jay Wright good.
Yeah, but Georgetown hired Craig Esherick. And immediately dipped, and John Thompson Jr. got him back, and then they dipped again. So,
yep. And they've never really been totally bad. But that's like most Big East schools.
And then there's weird
football
ones like
money pushed them out.
Georgia Tech replaces Bobby Crimmins with Paul Hewitt, who goes to the national championship game one year, and then was a disaster otherwise. Weird. There's some weird. Basketball is weird too, but I know. But you're right. They do work out sometimes, Mike.
Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I'd be very curious to see how Michigan and Alabama work out. To go back to our final message, what's going to be some of the juiciest stories of 2024? I think what's going on in Ann Arbor, Columbus, Tuscaloosa. Then you got coaches on a scintillatingly hot seat in the SEC. One resides in Gainesville. I think there's so many great storylines that we get a chance to talk about this entire off season, and we look forward to doing that. We look forward to having you folks back out there with us next week. As always, you can check out the website, jcnmorgan.com. Our thanks again to Josh Pate. He will join us again, I'm sure, in this off season. And we will have a number of different guests that'll join us as well here on the program as part of the
Luke
Chief
and
Sports
Bill,
Network.
Luke and Bill just pops in the chat box. What are you clowns up to? Hey, Mike, or Tom, you got a doppelganger in this H&R Block commercial, man. Go check it out.
Luke and Bill heard the bat signal. He heard you talking about his doppelganger. He said, I got to go ahead and check out the show.
He's a Batman. Yeah, I know he's a Batman, Superman guy.
It's just an honor for Tom Luganbill to check in our closing minutes of the program.
Beautiful.
That's
Made
great.
my day.
Yeah, that's all. Lugs, we'll get you on soon. Another prestigious member. You got Brando, now you got Josh Pate and Luganbill of the 2 or more appearances on JC and Morgan. We got to wrap things up. I know that there's some other fine programs on Chief, including ITG, and we don't want to have Phil, our Mad Dog producer, sweat any more than he already is, which he's probably sweating bullets as we speak. Thanks again to everybody for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.